push the button.
Hey, welcome everyone. I would like to call to order the Town of Ulysses Comp Plan Steering Committee meeting for June 4th, 2025. Our first order of business is roll call.
Carl Punkowski, Planning Board Chair.
Bob Line, Planning Board.
Neil Stegeson, Town Planner.
Roxanne Marino, Conservation Sustainability Advisory Council Chair.
Karen Nutter, I'm on the Board of Zoning Appeals as well.
Kim Moore on the Board of Zoning Appeals as well.
Liz Weatherby, Town Board.
And I am Ann DePetta, and I am on this committee, and I am the co-chair with Liz. Okay, did everyone? I know. I'm excited.
That should be the vice chair.
I know. Has everyone had a chance to review the agenda? And were there any amendments or changes to the agenda? Okay, then we need a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you.
As
Liz.
presented.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
I abstain and wasn't here.
Okay.
For the
For
agenda.
the agenda,
Agenda? You're here for the.
Oh, for the agenda, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
no worries.
You are here for the agenda.
Yeah, and
Done.
you're cool with the agenda.
Yes.
So we're all ayes for this, any nays or, okay.
Yeah.
All right, good. All in favor, we're yes. Okay, next order of business is our approval of past minutes. Did everyone have a chance to review the minutes for May 7th?
Yes.
Me as well. Any corrections, changes? Anything to say? Okay, so we'll need a motion to approve the draft minutes.
Make a motion to approve the draft minutes.
Thank you,
Carl,
Carl.
second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Abstaining.
Aye.
Me as well, because I wasn't here last month, so.
Okay, so two, all right. Excellent.
One question for Molly. When I looked online 2 days ago, the April minutes still showed as draft. And they were approved at the May meeting
Where were you looking online?
on the town website under the comp plan.
I really don't, I myself don't, but it's on the website, I put them on the Laserfish, which is
Okay,
our retention area.
But we probably should put them on. Where the public can.
can see them, but anyway, they still show, just a comment that I did, they still show it as being draft.
All right, we good?
See?
Good to see you in person.
That's right.
Good to see you too. Okay. Before we go forward, do you want to introduce yourself and your role? We already did roll.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Celia's committee member. That would, that,
Perfect.
okay.
Perfect. And we didn't have anybody online. I know that Diane, I meant to say this, Diane's gonna maybe join late. She's running late, I know. Okay, so this is the segment of our meeting, privilege of the floor, where members of the public may make general comments on items that are not related to items on our tonight's agenda. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes in length. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the board on items not on tonight's agenda? Okay.
Hi, Chris Kale, 3110 Du Bois Road. I'd like to compliment folks on the vision statement, including preparedness as regards climate change. That's been an area of real concern for me. I think it would be great seeing your maps if the EPA's flood zone maps could be included. They're free. So it seems like not a hard ask. But there's definitely, some pretty extensive areas within the town that are designated flood zones, and that should matter in deciding where to put housing. So I'm hoping you can do that. I also wanted to make a comment on the one existing map. It shows my neighborhood, and again, this is based on the source as being the only area for which this group is doing planning that is in the more densely populated area. But it does it in a way that is going to read to most residents as if it's the town of Ithaca, because there's just like a very thin little blue line that, and if you follow it out into the lake, it's like, or if you know where it is. But I think for most of our town residents who typically think of where I live as being outside of the town anyway, and it would be really, really good to kind of make that line fatter, or in some other way, maybe just, you know, white out the entirety of the town of Ithaca or something. But it'd be great, given that that is the area that has that situation and nowhere else in the township does. It would be great if that were more obvious for that.
Okay, great. Anything
Thanks.
else? Okay, great.
Chris, can I ask one question?
Sure, as many as you want.
Which map are you
What map?
talking?
Yeah.
Well,
Cause we
Yeah.
can definitely work on that to make sure it's clear where the town lines are and everything.
well,
in the
it's
map.
really
just, I don't know
difficult
which one
because
you're.
I'm only allowed to talk about it when it's not on your agenda, apparently. Which
Well-
is one heck of a rule,
Oh,
really.
no, that's okay.
Well, but
But as long as you asked, the
yeah,
one that's on your agenda.
there's a map.
But
Yeah.
do we have any maps yet that are part of this?
It's on your agenda from the last time under old business. But I couldn't talk about it the last time either because I didn't have it.
So the map that was at the visioning, like at the event at the school, is that? Not sure.
I can bring it up for you.
Yeah. So we know for sure
Yeah,
what you're
I
doing.
I just want to make sure we're
Yeah.
know what you're
incorporating your
asking.
comments on the right. map.
So when you look at housing element, there's a map section afterwards.
Yeah.
That shows in coloration.
It's page 27.
Oh,
Okay,
thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Okay, great.
It just
So,
wasn't in front of me.
Okay, nope, that, I just want to make sure.
Come
you-
on.
okay, great. So,
And if you look at it, you know, without zooming in,
yeah,
you very immediately like, oh, that's town of Ithaca.
yeah, gotcha.
Just like, oh, that's
Mhm.
Trumansburg, and then you go forward and
Yeah, no,
have
that's a
learned
good,
absolutely nothing.
yeah, that's a good note. So is that you that notes that and makes?
Well,
I can make a
Notation,
notation,
so
so it's page 27 of the housing now.
It needs a fatter line, or to take the color out of Ithaca. I mean, I don't know, maybe you can't fix maps because nobody here can do GIS. It's
They can.
summertime.
That's what
presume people that have.
MRB can.
Okay, so make the line fatter or take the town of Ithaca
The
out
color line.
entirely.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Thank you.
All right,
and just not to drag back on how, but I made an earlier request to Angelina's team on similar maps that we'll see in today's review for the community, or not community wellbeing, climate resistance and stuff like that, because there's wetland maps in there. And it shows areas, you know, across the lake and so on, and I think it'd be better if
Yeah.
we focus just on Ulysses for a lot of the maps. When it gets to wetlands and stuff, that gets a little tricky because they are connected and it's all one big, you know, watershed. But for stuff like this, I think we really should focus on Ulysses. Gray out perhaps other areas at the time.
What our GIS is currently figuring out.
Okay, so if it was grayed out, I can totally out this.
Okay, sounds good.
That's probably the best. Opposite that, you know, maybe just make the line fat.
Sure.
okay, thank you for that. Do we have a motion to close privilege of the floor?
Sure.
Thank you, Roxanne.
I'll second it.
Carl, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, so next is our update on the draft vision statements. Housing element draft and historic preservation built environment draft.
Yeah, so I can give an update on all three of those, so. We had the vote for the vision statement, so vision statement number 1 is the one that we pretty much reviewed over the last few weeks, we tuned up, we talked about. And then vision statement number 2 was the one that Roxanne had kindly drafted up for us. So we had 10 responses total. 60% of the votes were for option one, and then 40% were for option two. So that was the pie chart that was exported from Google Forms. So the first one was the one that won, so the one that we've been working on. But I do want to thank you all for just, allowing Roxanne to still share her version, and us having, a way to, vote and also look at that too. So thank you for that, for providing that.
Yeah, figured it wasn't gonna go anywhere, but.
No, it's okay. No, it was nice to have
First
something
of all,
clear.
clear.
That it wasn't going
Consider.
to from the beginning.
Absolutely. And then for the housing element, as well as I know we're kind of working on what we want to call the other one. Originally, we had a historic preservation, but we were thinking about broadening that. So we're still working through those. I know Eric is still working with the town on getting some information, updating charts and things like that. So we're still actively working through that. And then I'm gonna have a conversation with Caitlin. I know she had some language she wanted included in there for the historic preservation built environment component. So we're just working through some of those edits. So we're hoping to put those in the folder and just announce to you guys that those are in there, hopefully like mid-June, so you guys can at least take a look and make any other comments that you guys have. I also want to say, I'm very sorry for the link, that it was so troublesome for people. That was certainly not my intent, but hopefully everyone is able to access it now to get to the folder. So that's kind of just our home base, that I'll just continue to keep uploading content, things like that. Maybe this is a down the road thing. Do you think it's helpful if I have like a maps folder as we get them completed, to like put those in there, just so people have them as like a reference point?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think having multiple, like a redundancy, will probably help.
Sure. So we can do that too. I know our GIS team is updating some maps, so we can just have the maps be in there too. That way you can look at them as you're reviewing.
Was everybody able to get in on the latest link?
Yes.
Yep. It's about 4 o'clock today.
Yeah, right, me too. So,
Okay,
Yeah.
no, that's fine.
Alright.
I was able to get in last week, no problem, but then
right.
Yeah.
I was trying to finish.
Apparently, when I went
Yeah,
to reshare it,
Yeah.
it changed the permissions, and it was asking people to like log in, and I had to work with our IT team, I was like, yeah. So clearly I can't, and I, feel bad, but I wanna give more time for people to still, be able to do a deeper read, provide comments. So I was thinking maybe, do we wanna give like another week to like maybe like next Saturday, next Sunday, does that work? To give folks
Is that
some
enough time?
I'm already done.
I feel bad, I just focused on the economic one, because I knew that I wanted to get that one out of the way and I didn't have time to look at the other two today, so
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind
Well,
a chance to go.
What is the plan for that? Like, we'll then talk about them at the next meeting more, or? I mean, I feel like 5 days for 3 chapters to read everything, when you had no notice and you might have work, travel, which I did, and things, is just too short, and so I don't feel really comfortable about the
Right.
pace, like,
And that's
if
something.
it could be staggered, like you get one chapter over the month, and then another one, and then another one, it is just
Yeah.
not.
And that's something that we talked about, is like, just adjusting it so that it's not overwhelming to anybody, because obviously we all
Yeah, 'cause
have lives,
getting
jobs.
3 of them on the last Friday before the next Wednesday meeting.
Right, and
Pretty tough.
Yeah.
And not knowing when they're coming,
Right.
and so like I had to be out of town, and then I have this crew of people working all week with our lab, and that I have to be there, so I had no way to adjust anything.
When I
by
didn't
then.
have access on Friday.
Right, and I didn't either, but we didn't have any way to even adjust my schedules, not.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can definitely be flexible and adjust to something that is
Well,
more comfortable. for
Instead of
everyone.
bundling all 3 of them, if there's a way, can you scatter
Yeah, I-
them through the month?
Yes, and that's something that Niels and I talked about, is just, stagger it out so that
Yeah.
you're receiving them, but it's not all at one time, and it's not, a few days before, so you'll have
Yeah,
several weeks in
and
between.
then maybe just a message like this one's in the folder, and then, we have
Just
a
announce
week
it as we
to-
go.
Yeah,
Maybe
that
that
would
would be
be
a little
really
bit
helpful to
easier.
do as well.
Digestible.
So then we're gonna have an extra week. You said Saturday, are you looking at the 7th or the 5th? The 14th, sorry.
I
Just
think it would be the 14th, because
14th.
obviously I'm not expecting you to
Needs
read
to
it
be
all
the
by
14th
Friday.
for sure,
Yeah, so just so everyone can comfortably take a look
Okay.
at it.
Yes.
So by the 14th, which is 10 days from now,
All
for
3
those-
of these chapters are you talking
for
about?
those that don't have it completed their reviews yet. Is that a adequate time?
No, I've already
You
gone
know-
through my three, but that's.
I should be able to get them by next Saturday, but do you want 2 weeks?
I do, but
What about
if
the
nobody
18th?
else does.
That's fine.
I mean, I am not sad with more time, cause I am jammed.
Yeah, the
packed,
18th works
so-
for me, whatever you're comfortable with,
Alright.
works for me. So the 8th.
So while. I'm jumping.
I need to-
That's okay, like, I think it's good to like sort through this stuff, you know, just so we have a good action path going forward.
So 6/18 comments are due on these 3 chapters.
Yes.
And then,
And then what I was going to talk to you about, I know Niels and I were kind of talking, so I know in the next steps it says. For the next time to review again 3 chapters, do we think we want to do 2 chapters next time, since you're already working on? These comments for these 3 to introduce 2 chapters like during the month of June for us.
How
to
many do
talk
we have
about.
left?
5.
5, so it'd be like 2 this month, well, 2 to talk about during the July meeting and then 3 to talk about. During the August meeting.
How do you guys feel about that?
so what do we have left?
Yeah, what are they?
Cause I see transportation, capital facilities and utilities, community well-being, and then introduction, I'm sure.
There's introduction, there's rural, and then land use, and land use is a
Oh, that's gonna be a
major,
big one.
major one.
So in July, then we wouldn't talk about these chapters that we're
We
gonna
would.
review.
We would
But you
still
just
talk-
said 2 in July, so we talked
Well, we
about
would be
3
the-
older ones and 2 newer ones
Yes,
at the July meeting. Seems like a lot, but I get that we're trying to.
Well, I feel,
I do-
and I don't know if this is possible,
To
but
have a
maybe
real
we start with the
discussion,
3. We
Yeah.
start with the 3 and we see how far we get. And if we have to. I mean,
Yeah,
we can't stay all day
no,
and we have to give it the time it deserves.
yeah,
So
for sure, it's kind of important.
I don't know, how does that usually work? Do you just try to like, okay, we'll put 5 on the agenda and see how far we get? Or what, how does that?
I mean, I think
And
we
your
can
other
do
boards?
what we want, but we wanna be overly aggressive and put the 3, and then just depending on the conversation and how long it takes. I mean, those are 3 pretty big chapters.
Yeah,
With which I believe will be bringing up quite a lot of discussions. So it might be only reasonable to talk through those 3, but if we wanna have them on the agenda for the next meeting, just in case. But I also don't know where you are on the status on the others, like, can you get those to us?
yeah, we can, I was gonna say, even if we don't like formally discuss it, like
Yeah.
we would talk about it, we could still at least make it available to you, so
Yeah.
that you're still having. You know, enough time to review it, so you'll have more time to review it before.
And you have today's meeting to get through a lot of discussion on these 3 as well.
Right,
But
you'll
not everybody
present,
reviewed.
right, you're gonna present information, but we're not getting
Right.
actual feedback, cause a lot of people didn't, I
Didn't
mean, I
even
got.
get-
Right, it's just
partway
kind of
through
like
the
high
environmental
level,
one,
like
right.
if people had initial thoughts, if they have like content suggestions.
Right.
Or, you know, if they have very specific comments that they were able to get to them, like obviously we can talk about that.
that works.
Okay, does that work for everyone?
We're like I said, we're flexible on our end, so whatever is working better for you guys or however you wanna adjust, like, that's totally okay with us.
Well, we have a working
July.
document, right? So we have a document that we're making comments in, so we can be in there for these 3 and making, comments and having some discussion, right, in there. At least that you'll be aware of, 'cause you'll keep an eye on that, I would guess.
Yeah.
Then. In the next meeting, we start with those 3, and if we can get through the 3 and the 2, then great, but if not. Then
What
we'll
are the
have,
next 2 gonna be?
We can do,
yeah, what are the next?
transportation, I know Eric has kind of worked on the transportation chapter, so we can have that one, and then, maybe we can do community well-being, can bring that up next meeting.
Is there a short one?
I mean, probably community well-being is gonna be shorter than like capital facilities, so like we can.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
One of the shorter ones for the meeting with 5 chapters.
And I might be jumping now, but with the previous 2 drafts that we've already gone through and got substantial comments back, but. If we get additional comments from the committee, how does the committee want to start rolling that out for us to be able to post PDFs for
Right.
people to start seeing that? I mean, are we good doing that now, or do you want to? one
Like-
last,
The planning board and BZA to start sharing with the rest of the members.
Right, yeah, that kind of connects to the question I had, like, so some of us are here because we're representing other stakeholder groups, and so those folks want to read the chapters, at least certainly focus on the ones that are the most pertinent to
Sure.
their work. And so what's the timeline on which we do that? It kind of goes to what you're saying, you know.
Yeah. Well, last meeting, I thought we had said that we would give it the month and then we would have incorporated what we had put in for additional comments. And then at that point, we would be able to send it out to the committees and that sort of stuff. And it sounds like you were about 10
We're
days.
still working
away.
on things because we're still working with the town on getting some.
So once you get those ready, then, so like, this is what, the fourth, so about mid-month, we would be able then to have Neil's, and Neil's and I talked last night, but at least for the planning board, to have him get it out to the planning board members. I don't know if BZA wants to operate the same way like that, but rather than me sending something out, it needs to come out, I think, from Neil's as a focal point. So once you get it there updated by mid-June, then we would get it out to the rest of the planning board members to let them start reviewing just the first two chapters. And then the same, follow the same sort of pattern. What we go over in July, they would consolidate what we give them for updates on there. And then like mid-July or thereabouts, we would get those next three out, and
Are we reviewing those updates before they go to the planning board?
I think that's
only
exactly.
through, yeah, that's kind of what I'm asking, but I think it would only be through MRB SharePoint site, like any additional comments that you
Right.
have, they can incorporate that.
Okay,
So,
yeah, and that would be, and I hate to always say keep prompting, but like, hey, we're gonna send this to the planning board on Tuesday, like, it would be, cause there's a lot. to
Yeah.
Keep track of here, and so,
Right,
you know, if I knew it was going to the planning board next week, I might be like, oh yeah, I should go back and review that, cause I have been focusing on these other ones.
right. And then they'll all easily be able to, everybody from all these committees, that's a lot of people, will be able to access the SharePoint and
Yeah,
edit it.
and then once the other thing I was gonna mention too is like, once we get like the PDFs and we're good with them, I can have, who is managing the website, upload those on there too, cause I know we're gonna update with the minutes and everything like that, so I'm thinking we can also just put the draft content up there as well.
But in order to get comments, like say from the planning board, BZA, conservation and sustainability, that's a lot of people. Do you want to have like separate subfolders where you're collecting that, or you're just gonna invite all
Oh,
those people? I'm saying it's, you know, what, it's 10 and 6, it's like 16 people.
That's gonna be a messy document.
Right,
Yeah,
so that's just my question there.
I guess there's like two options, either you could kind of do what like we've been doing, if they wanna like mark it up in the document, obviously that might get very clustered and busy, or if they kind of want to download it, mark it up, or they want to email their comments, I think, do we have like a complaint email? Maybe we can just have that be like a central point that they could submit all of the comments.
Email them, so you'll make an email, and when that comes
Yeah,
out,
I
that
think
it's ready to.
we already have one, right? I think
we have a
there's,
designated email account for the comp plan, so
Okay.
and we can just forward that to MRB.
So you'll
it's
be
coming.
reading that one though for this stuff as info comes in front.
yeah.
Okay.
So so as your respective committees make
Yeah.
those comments,
Okay,
they can go to that and then get sent to us.
yeah. Okay, and so yeah, if you can include that when you say these are ready for the committees, when you send that email out, that would be helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
So just to follow your file structure, I think I get where you're going here. So the master is always gonna, when we're done, the masters where we'll go to the document that's cleaned up, it's PDF, all the comments.
Exactly.
So that'll be.
Yeah, so that'll be updated, so like,
Yep.
once we like do those edits, exactly, we'll just
Right,
have
we'll
a
just go
new
to-
master clean copy.
Right.
Basically, which would be, you know, what you can share.
Okay.
We can eventually
That's
upgrade.
great.
Last thing on that, if we do send it, or when we do send it to, for example, a planning board BZA. Normally I like to link things for the public to be able to review that, but if it essentially puts that out in the public ether. Is the committee okay with that?
What's the usual timing for that?
Well, the only thing then, I mean. We know nebulously that we're planning for an open house maybe in September. I think it's better to get more information out in advance.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
So you're talking about like the memo that you usually write to the planning board or the BZA, you have links to different documents, so then gets posted, because it's a memo from you to the planning board, gets posted on our website, and then anybody else can access those links.
it's a good public
Right.
dissemination of info. Yeah.
I mean, I think we need to get the public's input sooner than later. If we're still targeting a September open house. I don't want that to be the first time people are reading it, but I also wanna look at the documents first before they.
Right, and that's kind of like where I was going, is like, I wanna make sure,
Yeah.
like, we as a group feel comfortable, cause I know it's kind of collaborative that we're all working on it, making suggestions, so like, once we as a group feel comfortable with it, then.
Yeah.
that
Why
makes
don't we, can we? Mid-June, why don't we all, I know we just had 3 chapters we're gonna do, but if we can review the next 2 that you put out that we already reviewed just before they go to the planning board. Just to make sure we're on
Yeah.
page.
Yeah, and that's
We're
what
gonna
I'll
have-
do, is like, we'll make an announcement that they're in there, so you guys can kind of do a final review, make sure you
Yeah.
guys feel comfortable with it before we would share. it.
Cause I wanna make sure our comments are addressed and,
Exactly,
I mean, overall, they weren't too nitpicky, but there's just a couple that we wanna make
for
sure
sure,
we've covered. before.
we wanna make sure it's representative of. what you
Yeah,
asked
there
us.
were some couple bigger, I
Yeah.
think, things that were.
Yeah, so let's just hold off. Maybe they'll get it in July.
Yeah,
But I still think that we need to start getting them out to the boards and the public before.
But that'll be a collective clean copy without our comments,
Yes.
it'll be all,
Exactly.
that's what I want, right?
Exactly.
There, thank you, and that's gonna be in the master directory and
Yep.
story, perfect.
That's why I wanna make sure. it's-
Yep,
so the map, it's in there now, it's not.
inside each of the
Really a
elements.
master.
That's just the original, that was a
There's
clean
one that's
copy, so people
editing,
could review
and
it,
there's
cause
one that's
people
called master.
thought it would be easier to
Okay.
have one clean copy to review that didn't have all of the comments on it. So that,
So like if you look at type each one, the structure is the same,
Right.
they have the copy for editing, and then they have the master for viewing.
So if you want to go back and
Yeah.
look at how much some.
And where the
changes
comments
go.
came from, yeah, you can go back to the editing one, and then master is where the beautiful documents gonna live.
Beautiful. Sparkling one.
were there any other questions regarding structure, any other concerns?
I just wanna make sure, just because of the weird thing with the permissions, had them, lost them back, so right now there's 5 directories that we should have access to in the share, right?
Full 5 folders, yeah,
And then we've got the one, just the document hanging. out.
exactly.
Perfect.
And
Just
then
wanna
as
credit-
as we talked about, like, kind of staggering the next couple that come out, we'll just announce to you this folder's available, it'll be set at the exact same place, so.
Perfect.
You'll know how to go through it.
Easy, thank you.
Okay, great. So are we going through each of the draft economic development element, the environment and natural resources?
Yeah, we
Go
can do
through
that.
it
We can
over?
kind of just talk about, some high level, like, initial thoughts, like I said before, if you have any content suggestions, I know some people had, some language suggestions, that's all very much welcomed. Or obviously there's a lot of data out there regarding, climate change, natural resources, things of that nature. If you know of any initiatives or other studies you want us to be thinking about, like I know Roxanne shared today, the coring that's going on, anything like that, right, we certainly can include there, obviously, the FEMA maps, that are gonna pertain, we obviously are gonna update that and, have a more robust discussion about streams within the chapter, so.
So do you want to start with the economic development?
Yeah, we can start with that.
So which copy should we look at?
So that
Editing
is
one?
The editing.
The editing one.
the editing one.
Oh, you were good. You put your name.
I had to because I'm guest user.
I am too, but I
Yeah.
didn't think about that.
I was gonna say, you don't have to, like, you don't have
I'm
to share your
just-
name, so if you're just guest user and you wanna leave it at that, like.
You're anonymous, thank you.
Well, are we guest users all now?
Yeah, everybody's listed as guest users.
Now,
Karen Meadors.
I was able to.
Yeah, how'd you get in there?
She's
I
special.
noticed that. It's like, we're all
But-
guests, but.
I thought I didn't do anything
Champion.
special, I think it gave me
Oh,
the
I'm not
option.
signed in.
Oh, maybe you have to be signed in.
No, stop.
Yes, so
Stop.
that's the thing, but Angelina worked.
I
with
think
IT
the way we
to
did
solve
it is like, I didn't know
Okay,
with access to the link. Well, so everyone's just considered a guest at this.
that's
point,
helpful
just
to put your
like
name on it.
Not
If
have
you
a
get-
barrier to make people log in.
Yeah, if it says
Give them a
guest, you
headache.
just type your name.
Okay. Alright. As far as the setup, we have pretty much the same structures we've had with the other ones of having an introduction and background information. Looking at any implementation, I know we are still working on looking at the original audit that we did in the fall. I know some things were kind of sparse as far as like, we didn't know if things were implemented or not. So if you're going through and you know for sure that like, something's been implemented with the policies and actions that are listed below, like you can just comment like, this was implemented, or this program is going on, or we know nothing's going on here. I'm totally okay with that, but we are working through updating that.
Can I just, wondering. Because we talk about the materials that are used to develop each of the chapters, and it's pretty much the same for like the Tompkins County countywide planning policies. Like the sentence there is the same for each chapter, right? Is there a way maybe to bring some of that to like an introduction? To make the chapter smaller and go right into the material, is what I'm thinking.
Like a introductory chapter that has.
Yeah, that
demographic,
like goes through
basic
each of the
information, yeah.
plans that we've reviewed. But and then maybe we can still bullet them out, but leave the
Sure.
summaries out, just to try to streamline them.
Oh, yeah, we can do that, so have like more of like the summary part be more for like an
Yes.
intro and then just list
Yes.
it so that we're just.
Yeah, so but I
Cut to the
still think
chase.
like each one going through what we looked at for each different element makes sense, because they're not gonna be looking at everything for every development.
Sure,
Every element, but it's just the first page and a half. If every 10 chapters or each chapter is gonna look like that,
sure,
might get kind of,
yeah, we can definitely do that.
see how it looks. That was
Yeah.
just the thought I had.
I think it's a good thing.
And then, so you would probably want that same edit for the previous 2 chapters we did too.
Yeah, and I think it was just because I was reading Parade around,
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it
Yeah.
stood out
Yeah.
to me a little
yeah,
bit.
you can do
We
that.
talked
for
about
sure.
these ones, right?
Yeah, like you could still leave like the bold points
So just keep the.
to summarize and like highlight which ones we looked at, but the summaries.
So I think that most of the people on this board we're gonna know where to look for this, but I almost wonder if you need to make those hyperlinks to those documents.
We can do
Right.
that.
So Tompkins County Planning Policy, make that.
Have it be like
maybe
a
have it be a
actual live
hyperlink to the
document.
actual document.
We can do that for sure.
Ditto for the other ones, I'm just talking
Yeah.
out loud, but I'm just thinking if.
That's a good
I'm reading it,
idea.
Yeah.
No,
And if
that'd
I
be
wanna know
helpful.
something more, it'd be one click.
Yeah, and I know we
Make it
talked
easy.
about like potentially just having like a resource list like in the appendix too, but I also don't mind having
Yeah.
it embedded within the chapter too.
Yeah, that would be better.
Footnotes or whatever's cleanest and
For sure.
easiest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when you're dealing, just more is better, and hyperlinks don't really do much except for make it easier for
Easy
people
for
to
people
find.
to check.
things.
Except if they
Unless you're
stay
reading a hard
existing,
copy.
then they get broken and they don't work.
That'll just
So
be-
it's like,
Right, there should still be the resources section
Yeah.
in the back for if someone is reading a hard copy.
For sure. Okay. Have those that we're working through. As far as the inventory and analysis, a lot of that is stemming from the economic base report that we prepared. Obviously, this is, when it comes to the housing part, that's being updated with what Eric is working on right now, so I put, a disclaimer that, this is being updated, just so people didn't think that, we ignored it, like that is being updated.
Sorry, what page are you on in the?
So so for the existing conditions, so that starts on page.
The inventory and analysis of existing economy.
Yeah, so part.
That's page 7.
Seven.
Okay.
That's just an overview of that section. And then, I was just gonna ask, as far as the recommendations and the objectives, so looking at the goal objectives and policies. For those, I know some did have a chance to take a read. Did you have like any initial thoughts or comments that you wanted to share based on what you reviewed.
So this is done again.
Yeah, can you be more clear on where we are?
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
so the goals, objectives, I'm sorry, this is. So the goals, objectives and policies. Section
Page 19.
19.
Haven't done a comparison. Do these build off of the Wayne 2009 plan? Are they?
They do, so there's some alignment there, yeah, so
Okay,
some of
these-
the recommendations are the same, I know some of them are also looking at other. County plans that are there, so there's some alignment there, so.
Oh, I was just getting down to page 19.
Section 20.
So 20 is where the actual objectives, where you started seeing them listed out, but I just wanted to check. With those that had a chance to review, if you had any ones you wanted to share.
Well, I think my most significant big picture item, which you may or may not agree with, but there's too much emphasis on affordable housing. Affordable housing does not stimulate economic development. And if you look at the housing mix right now, it's not the affordable housing that we have the greatest deficit in. It's really high middle income housing that we have the greatest deficit. Look at current real estate listings. If someone wants to come here and buy, a 4 or 5 bedroom home, relatively new, 3,000 to 4,000 square feet, there's really nothing. If they have a budget of 500,000 to 900,000, they're going to go to an adjacent town because there's not much here. We've got some very expensive properties on the lakefront. I think there's one maybe listing right now. And then otherwise, there just doesn't seem like there's a lot for what a typical upscale 2-person working family might be looking for. And people who would raise the median or mean income, that was a kind of another comment about medians versus means, and maybe consider using both so it will better illustrate kind of the skew of data or the lack of skew. But I think that since this chapter is really about economic development, we want to do things that stimulate more tax base, not things that are going to cause a need for greater spending. Higher end housing would produce both higher property tax revenue, plus it brings in people who have the ability to shop at the boutique shops and go to dinner and spend $200 for dinner that the people who were going to move into low income housing
Those are
are
two
not
different
gonna
things. Pardon me.
support.
There was affordable housing and low income housing are two different things. And
Yes,
you, and
but I put.
I think that is a gross misrepresentation of what affordable housing is, to say that those are people that would not shop at a boutique or be able to contribute to the tax base. Just,
Not as much. I mean, the math just
I
indicates.
hear what you're
if
saying,
A
but
$1 billion home is going to have higher property taxes than a $300,000 home.
but I'm
Someone
not sure
who's-
that that's the goal of
someone-
the goal of the town is to have.
Diverse.
But if you want to
Diverse.
achieve, if you want to achieve diversity, we need to include all groups. And
I
that was
agree.
kind of my concern as I read through this, and like you want to grow this low income housing or affordable housing.
Those are different things.
Yes, but both. I mean, how do you define affordable housing?
Very clear. Very
What-
clear guidelines.
What is the dollar range for a town of Ulysses?
Well, it's more related to the area median income versus the price of the house. So it's
Right.
based on, you have to start with the area median income, but those numbers do exist. And we could look at those numbers and to make sure that everyone is heard and accounted for from all income levels. I don't know what, if we have a graph somewhere of what our income, I'm sure there is
Well,
somewhere, what our income,
it
to
says
make sure
right
that it
here,
is balanced.
What's the town's median income is? Oh, you mean the distribution of it?
Yeah, that we're
Yeah.
having a balanced availability of property for all income levels, like, yes, let's look at those numbers, but.
Did we get that off of the survey at all? I mean, I don't know how many people, that's a subset, but did you ask, was the income range asked on the survey?
I don't think it
I
was.
didn't think so. I just was wondering where you get that information.
I mean,
I mean, the median you can get, but
Yeah,
where
the area
we get the
median index is what we
distribution.
get. Yeah, the
I don't
distribution.
know.
Yeah, I was
Yeah, I
gonna
was
say
gonna
this,
say the
Yeah.
bureaus,
and Eric might actually have the
Do they have it
info
for
already, so.
2020?
can-
The American Community Survey might be out.
Oh, right, yeah.
That's the one.
Well, I just wasn't sure it was out for us. Well, we could use the most recent.
But I mean, I think it's worth discussing. Do you want to raise the mean or median income in the town? I do. I think that would encourage all of the goals and objectives that we're seeking. It would remove burden from the rest of us if there's more high income people living in the community. But I don't see anything in the document that recognizes that and encourages and asks, what can we do to attract people who are going to pay higher taxes and take the burden off the rest of us?
I think the tax burden in my mind is not necessarily on the residential. It really should be businesses, in my mind.
Also, and this happens in a lot of towns, happens
We
in
don't have
Vermont,
enough
happened in New Hampshire.
We need a place.
That's what happened. $1 million homes were built, everybody else had to leave.
Yes. and
Because
that's
the
what-
tax rate went up so high for a small farm, they couldn't afford to stay there anymore. So putting $1 million homes is ridiculous.
And we've had some of that.
It
after
is
COVID.
absolutely ridiculous to think that we're gonna be, Ulysses is gonna be $1 million home everywhere.
I mean, I
It
think
is.
Well, she's
I
not
think-
saying everywhere, she's
No.
saying a balance, so I.
Well,
I
we
mean,
already have $1 million homes along the lake.
I think that to have a conversation maybe of exploring what that breakout is. I really don't know for the town of Ulysses. And I agree that the healthiest places have a mixture of all different kinds of
Right.
people from all different kinds of walks of life, not just one or the other.
That's correct.
So that
Exactly.
mixture, right? So maybe we don't have enough information to actually really see if we are off.
So we're suggesting that you get an income distribution to
distribution.
include in addition to this.
Is that what this table is? Household income distribution?
Maybe there is.
Next page.
With apologies, I have not had the time to read this, so if I'm saying
Oh my gosh,
something
I lost the
stupid,
page.
I'm sorry.
No,
No,
That's a
no,
lot of
no,
technical data.
None of us did
Right.
because it was really
Right.
in the past.
Just for the
24
record of whoever listens to the recording.
I lost it.
Are you in Harrison?
No, I'm in.
I think Karen's point though was that they were using the median, right? And you were talking about like maybe looking at the median,
Yeah.
getting a better, broader.
Right, because you can have median, but if you have lots of properties that are lower or lots of properties that are higher, having the mean would also tell you how much there's skew
Alright.
in one direction. I just thought it gives a little bit more information.
I mean, is there a reason why we can't do both to show kind of what the breakdowns are?
That's was my recommendation. I would assume that data is available.
And I think we could also go back and start looking at the survey. I don't think income question was asked, but I do
Yeah, it's about that.
think that there are some other types of homes or housing questions that we can also kind of pull out some information. Again, this is also gonna go to the public for review, so we're gonna get some feedback, I'm sure, on this topic once we get to the public, the open house.
There is a table of household income distribution.
It's right
And
there.
it's pretty,
It's there,
It's
but
pretty
greater than
balanced.
two
I was gonna
hundred.
say, it
We're
actually is
actually pretty balanced.
The highest number is greater than 200,000.
Angelina, are you pulling
Yeah.
from 2020 census?
It's
that
relatively
2024?
small percentage.
You're pulling from 2024 census?
Well, this,
Yeah. That's what it
this
says
table
here.
is 2020.
I don't think that's
Esri.
available yet.
this is Esri.
Yeah, no, we use Esri too. Like most of the stuff we have is still, the official is from 2024 or 2020.
Yeah, this looks pretty balanced. I mean, the highest is 50 to 74,000. And then the next highest is 100 to 150,000. Our lowest. I think,
But that's a pretty low upper cap. I mean, why doesn't that range go out to a higher number, and then it will show even more how we
So you
actually
think
skew to the lower.
do you
income.
think the chart should go over $200,000, even
Have
though that
more units up above it.
200,000 is
Don't stress,
8.3%?
I'm sure you're using 2020 because
1%.
2024 is still getting compiled. I just
Yeah.
Googled it. 'Cause
I mean,
I'm just like wondering if.
I mean, I don't know to
she
what
didn't make
extent
it like this like a little bit.
That,
No,
that
I
data is
just- that's what I-
available
no, that's
for
what I
the
was saying.
census,
That will
or
be-
how
I
do you
mean,
get that
over
information?
200,000 is
Well, this data is really
8.3% of our
2020,
population.
like, that 2020
So
is very small.
The data set that's readily available to the
So you
public
think
right now is
that you-
2020.
you would like
census.
more-
They're compiling 2024 right
better
now,
work.
but that should be coming out. They'll start dribbling it out through the course of this year.
So we should
I don't know,
change
I'm
all
trying to
those to not be
That at the fact that
2024.
Exactly,
5% of our town has. less
Yeah,
than
I
2,000
maybe,
Exactly.
maybe they have a dribbling
And-
of something. I just.
Yeah,
hope
I
it
can
hasn't been
confirm what
acquired.
did you
And it was
get
hard for
like.
them to
this
afford
is
to have.
Yeah, just
And
to know.
everybody
Stress.
Yeah.
deserves to have an affordable.
I just know that
safe
the
house.
census stuff that we
That's
have
fair.
right now that we published online is 2020.
But
'cause
we
don't
have
the
more
data set.
resources if we have a larger tax base.
So can we, when we're looking through this, over the next 10 days. Can folks look at these numbers and how the descriptions are? And we wanna be inclusive of everybody, but we also wanna make sure that we're. Keeping in mind what the town survey says, cause ultimately this is what the town wants, not necessarily what the 10 of us individuals here.
That's right.
Correct. So just as you're
And that
reviewing
was
it,
a
let's
resounding.
put the thoughts, the comments in there, and I think it's great comments, and I'm open for any possible.
And
shake
just
up
for
of this
context, cause I
table.
know you were newer to the committee, like when we probably did our overview of the community survey, a big topic that came up. Is people feel like they're being placed out, like a lot of like older people like wanna like age in place or they wanna downsize, but they're really not able to, or. There's family members that they want them to come here, but maybe they're not able to do so. So those are just some of the challenges that they brought up of like, I wanna stay here or I want my family to come here, but. We're having a hard time being able to afford to do so. So those are just comments that came up a lot. So that's why, we just wanna make sure we had recommendations that were reflecting that. So it wasn't to be, exclusive of other groups, but it just was to show that like. We were hearing the community of like what they're asking for.
Niels?
So thank you.
Sorry, you have your hand up there.
No.
Oh.
So a few things, hopefully not going down rabbit holes. One, I think the discussion of affordable housing and what really that is. Maybe we can open up that in the housing chapter, because there's a lot of misconception of what affordable housing is, right? It's not always low income housing. But having a discussion of that, I think would be great in the housing element. I don't know if it's necessarily germane to the economic development, really. I mean, for example, objective 2.2.1 says to promote the construction of diverse and affordable housing in the town. I think the Neil could be threaded maybe a little bit better just to say construction of diverse housing that is available or affordable to all income levels or something like that.
Right,
That's
I like
a
that,
way
yeah.
to get that captured and talk about affordable housing in the housing element. The other thing I wanted to talk about was
What, I don't know, or which one was it? I'm sorry.
2.2.1. And just real quick, two other things. There was a study a while ago, I think by HUD, that showed tax base revenue for municipalities and what you get from like big box stores to mansions to small homes. The biggest bang for the buck has always been mixed use. But having something like that I think in this chapter would be great to see where mixed use, well, not just mixed use, but where greatest tax revenue base for a municipality comes from. To see where maybe the community would like to see, growth targeted for that area. And then the other thing, don't get too caught up in data, because the feds got cut a long time ago in the census. So hard data is no longer really available. What we're getting is ACS, it's like American Community Survey. And they extrapolate data based on a very small number. And the smaller you get, the more exaggerated those numbers get. So just maybe we can talk about them in the introductory chapter or something as well. Just to keep in mind that if we're seeing like 19.2%, it could very well be 40%.
Right.
So.
Okay.
Yeah.
We think that's where that 0.0 new houses
Right.
came from.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So Neil, are you suggesting taking out a lot of this stuff from this chapter and moving it into the housing chapter that we
I think just.
already reviewed, or?
Just the concern about like affordable housing, I think that's, from my perspective, I think that's better discussed in housing chapter. Anytime we're talking about housing down here, I think it'd be great to say available for all community or income levels or something along that lines.
I mean, I know this is kind of a, but to me, if we had like a chapter, I don't know if it's introduction or whatever, like a demographics chapter, the current state of things, where we had all of this stuff in there,
Yeah.
then you could refer, like a lot of comp plans I know do that. Then we can just refer back to that in a sentence or two, like you just said before, that covered what you wanted. But you don't have to have it like parceled out into each chapter. You have to find exactly where it's the most pertinent. I know that will take a lot more rearranging, but I think it might be something really worth looking at, you know, because then you'll have a lot of that stuff in there, you know, and you won't have to have all this here, and you can just cut to the
I do think
chase.
it'd be
of
nice
this.
to have a place where we have data.
Yeah, it's like, but
But you
no-
can hyperlink to. it
often
there.
it's put in one place,
Yeah.
you know, and then you could look at the data chapter if you want, and it refers back to when you're reading the other chapters. I think our current company is structured that way. I mean, I'm not saying it has to be our new one, but I would find that a lot easier to find the information all in one
Right.
spot.
I'm gonna second what Neil said, because census doesn't include income anymore. I had to double check that because I thought it did not, and it has not since 2000. So the information that's collected doesn't include income, so if we're getting it from other sources that are maybe not as inclusive or wholly, then you're gonna get some skewed numbers. So I think that um I'm gonna second Neil's on that one and just say, be careful, let's not get in a rabbit hole about the numbers and the percents, because I don't really know if that data is really a true representation, and that's nothing about you, you look that right, I'm just.
Oh, no, I
It's
Yeah.
all about the census data and everything
Yeah.
that's changed.
No, I agree.
It's
Yeah.
been, it's a lot has changed
Yeah.
recently, so.
I mean,
Um,
I think I personally just had them, you know, include the charts in there just so it's extra context, like for readers, just because, I mean, obviously, you know, we might know these sources or be able to readily like look it up or flip back and forth, but sometimes, you know, people just might want to see it right there as context, but like if you feel it needs to just go in the back, similar to how the current structure
Or
is.
not in the back, I think, or.
Just like
in the
somewhere-
beginning, in
Yeah,
the
the
front,
beginning,
yeah.
yeah.
And also, if data like this is included, as Kim's saying, we should be clear about the source and the error of it, you know, or whatever, the way that it's compiled, if we're gonna include it. And so then people can take it for what they want.
Put a disc, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, look at this as a committee of 10 and we're all going down rabbit holes about
Yeah.
numbers that we're looking
Yeah.
at. Imagine we get hundreds of people looking at us, they're gonna be like, what? So, I mean, yeah.
But yeah, I was thinking like in the intro, we could probably just have like the market based report with like all the demographic.
Yes.
With the topic front
Yeah.
loaded.
That would be.
That way it's a
helpful.
good intro.
And then it will shorten these chapters, so you can get
Yeah.
to the, as
The
Liz
meat
was
and
saying,
potatoes.
you can kind of get to the point.
And you can hyperlink to
Yeah,
those.
right.
You know, to those tables, and that would be helpful, yeah. Well, we should definitely, and maybe this already exists, but have like a really clear idea of what affordability means and how that's.
I was gonna say,
different.
we should, like, I know we've talked about having, like a glossary, so that we would have that defined there, make sure we're all in agreement. You know, where the.
And
definition-
affordability, really what it means is affordable for everybody, so everyone at this table should be able to pay no more than 30% of their income for their housing costs, right? Every person at this table and every person in our community, like that is what affordable housing is. But it gets skewed, people don't really understand that, so.
So we'll focus on that in the housing chapter then, go
Yeah.
back to the
Yeah.
economics.
But obviously,
Yeah.
if you had a higher income base, then that would also support a higher cost of housing as well.
Yeah, right, to be balanced and fair. What else, where are we? in the economic development chapter.
I think we're still just talking through, we were on, what's it, page 20, we were chatting. I basically was just asking, you know, if there's any initial thoughts, for people who did have a chance to review it.
I unfortunately have lots of comments.
Yeah.
Not
Okay,
because
did
they're-
you have like any like big picture,
Sorry.
like items
No.
that like you wanted to share or?
So just generally, you'll see that there's sort of a theme, and I think I put that at the very top. I was like, just to sort of give an explanation of where my thought process is as you go and look at my individual comments. So what I was saying is this is the overall theme that I'm thinking is important when we're discussing economic development. So that we recognize that small businesses come in all shapes and sizes, boutiques and cafes to essential trade services, remote professionals, home-based entrepreneurs. We value them all, whether your business supports tourism, provides day-to-day services, operates online. If you're here to keep the local economy running, even if it's behind the scenes, you belong here. And I feel strongly about that because there's some words in here that were troubling, troubling is not the right word. So there was a reference to like good jobs. What does that mean? Good is subjective. There was a reference to ideal businesses, and I struggle with that because there's lots of businesses that aren't pretty and maybe aren't ideal.
Oh, this
for what-
idea is very subjective.
Yeah.
Like,
like
what does that mean?
subject- Yeah, what does that mean, right? Like, and I'm envisioning somebody else that owns a business coming in 5-10 years that wasn't part of this, as I've had to do in my own life. Reference back to the comp plan and try and justify why my business is fitting into the previous comp plan. I want a future business to be a little more inclusive.
Yeah.
And understand that while we all want cute cafes and boutiques, you still need some of the ugly underbelly businesses in order to keep the economy going here.
Essentially.
And also support the tourism. You know, you can't have tourism without the people that clean the hotels, the people that are running businesses that support that, and maybe they're not pretty and might not fit into what people consider to be ideal. I think we just need to be careful about that language. So you'll see it's kind of peppered throughout here where I just said, can we just talk about this language and just think about maybe the wording a little differently.
For sure.
That was my thought.
For that.
That's great. That's awesome.
Oh, and Niels, I did have an actual legal question.
Hmm.
So this is one of the things that I've come up and I was wondering about. So I understand what people are saying. They don't want big box stores, right? But technically, if it fits into the residential zoning, legally, can we turn
Well,
it
the
away?
commercials,
What did I say?
residential.
Jeez. It's been a long week. Yeah, if it's in residential, you don't care, right? No, I apologize. But if it fits, like, for example, Dollar General, right? If it fits, can the town really legally turn that down? It's just a question, not a
So
personal preference.
hypothetically speaking, for some big boxes. I wouldn't call Dollar General a big
No,
box.
like Home Depot,
Costco.
Lowe's, right? Costco.
Right.
Oh,
Walmart.
Walmart.
Costco will be awesome. Just kidding. Save me an hour and a half drive.
If the zoning code allows for commercial development up to 5,000 square feet, for example. As long as an applicant meets all the other site plan requirements, height, setbacks, all that stuff. It's going to be very difficult for the town to say no.
Okay, that's helpful.
It can be easily challenged.
Thank you.
So that's the feedback of the comp plan into zoning. It's like, trying to achieve what the comp plan says the community wants, right? Is that?
For
Correct.
example, in the last comp plan, there's references of. Small local owned businesses, so that kind of means the community said that they prefer like your boutique stores, not Dollar General. You can't really do that legally.
Right,
Yeah.
that's what I was sort of getting at when,
Yeah.
that's what I wanted to hear. I didn't think we could actually legally say.
Yeah.
One of you is pretty, one of you is not, because if we're looking at it as being inclusive. I'm lucky because I can afford to shop at Wegmans. Other people in my community might not be able to do that and need a Dollar General right next to them. Somewhere that's along the transportation route where they are taking public transportation. That's a whole nother thing.
We have one.
But I just wanted to
right
point that
across the
out.
Border.
You what, I'm sorry?
We have one right across the border.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I didn't want to get a
don't think we
conversation.
need Another one.
I wasn't arguing for that.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. I was very clear. I was just using that as an
Right.
example of how it's subjective and
Yeah.
people can consider one business pretty and one business
Right.
not. But if we're being inclusive for economic development, necessarily, we should look at everything, and you answered my question. Thank you.
I know, just like generally speaking, there was a lot of, kind of trying to empower the local workforce of getting more workers to, you know, not just come work here, but also stay here. So I know that was a goal that's kind of, you know, encouraged throughout, I know as far as like language, like for example, I'm looking at, 3.1.1. Not supposed to say, when it says find opportunities to teach in-demand skills in the town of Ulysses. I feel like in demand, I don't actually like that term, I don't know if you guys wanna say. Like career skills, you
What
know,
page is
just
this?
broaden it,
It's 23.
23, like, do we think like. You know, broadening, like, is that an example of something we would wanna broaden? And not just say in demand? Or do you think in demand is?
demand is an actual.
I was gonna
list
defer
that-
to Ty on that one, because I actually read this section and I was like, I like that the fact said encourage employers and it wasn't a requirement, but the
Right.
fact that we have those tools and they
Yeah.
can use that, I think is good. So in demand is actually a workforce
okay with
term,
it.
so we're not devaluing anybody with that statement. Oh, but what about the will require, in the department says workforce development will require significant coordination, does that mean it, like, you have to have coordination, or like, you must coordinate with us? Was my emphasis on the wrong syllable there?
Which objective?
It's
Well,
under
three.
3, it's just the second paragraph where it says workforce development will require significant coordination among partners, and I wasn't sure if it meant.
Yeah.
You have to coordinate with them, or look, it's
Maybe
gonna be a lot.
they might
It's an
be more
opportunity.
appropriate.
Yeah, right, it's an opportunity, but
Yeah.
it's gonna be a lot of work, but
Yeah.
Benefit us down the road.
Yep.
And diversity. Workforce.
yeah, no, okay, see, I was looking
Maybe
at that
will
wrong.
involve.
No, I think I was emphasizing the wrong word. When you read it again, depending on how you emphasize it.
No, I sorry, I did not read this chapter at that time either, but
Well,
I definitely will be, commenting a lot, but yeah, I don't, but yeah.
I think
don't
I
like-
read it wrong. I just
But I
read it.
think like if you, I think that's important, though, like you read it wrong first, so like
Right.
I think there is something there that needs to be changed if people can read it wrong. First,
Yeah, because I
at
mean,
first glance.
I love that it's in here because I think that's one of the things that's lacking is encouraging us to use your resources, right? Like that's what it's there for. Let's do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So I love that it's there and that it's encouraging.
And I know another, so 20. Just looking at objective 2.1, I know something that we talked about. We talked about it with the housing one as far as, you know, we wanna do a lot of adaptive reuse if we can. So just looking for opportunities of, you know, is there an opportunity to take existing buildings and have, you know, additional businesses, grow businesses that way, so I know that was something kind of carried over, that was like, you know, a similar value that we wanted to showcase that here too.
I
No,
did throw in
it's-
something there about you guys had previously talked about before I was here in industrial park. I wanted to caution everybody about using that statement and we should probably research it a little more. We have on Brown Road, which was an industrial or tech park with 14 buildings in foreclosure right now. So I get a little nervous about us creating an industrial park, putting all these buildings in one spot and then finding ourselves in a similar, not that it would, but in a similar situation. So I think in reading that sounds great. You have one area where you have all this stuff, but it also can go other way and can be quite a nightmare. And so I just thought I'd put that out there because I don't know how public that information is, but it is happening and it really is going to be detrimental to that area.
What area is that?
It's Brown Road, it used to be
Near the airport.
Cornell Business Park
Yeah.
or something like that. It used to-
But not in town of Ulysses.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
no, I was using that as an example of if we create the same concept,
Yeah.
there's
Right.
good and bad,
Right.
right? And just maybe research it a little more on your own before you go, yeah, what a great idea, because
Yeah, in some ways, if things are spread out, if one business was out, you're not left with an entire.
ghost town,
Right.
yeah, that's really
That's-
what's happening.
And then
right
it's hard for any business to come back, because they don't want to be surrounded by vacancy.
Yep.
So I think we're trying to spend 20 minutes on each one.
Yes, I was just gonna
About
suggest that, you know,
20
you guys
minutes
can
on
make your
this.
comments and we can move on to chapter 6. The environment and natural resources.
And good
So,
news, I had no comments because I didn't get to read that.
I know.
Second, taking out or really seriously considering industrial parks. I mean, we don't have that much space in this town anyway to put an industrial park.
Right.
And so I just think we should talk at least more about, and what is industry that you want to
Well, I
have in
think that
there?
might be,
Because industry, I remember, was a really big discussion
Just gonna-
back during parking and everything. And so
Yeah.
it's a big range of what industry is, and you have to be pretty clear on what you mean.
Are we still on economic?
I just wanted to follow up on that
I made-
industrial
I made
park
that
industry
note.
comment, yeah.
And to Kim's point, I mean, there's, when we start talking land use, there's, for planners, there's a definite concept when you say industrial. And that term though, colloquially, industrial can also mean tech park, right?
I think that's
So-
why I questioned, I put in my comments, question was either, it was called Cornell Tech, yeah, there was some, thank you. I
Yeah, so
probably
having
missed
like
it.
a better. Like terminology.
Yep.
Overall.
Yeah,
For sure.
exactly. Just be clear on what we're talking about.
Yeah,
in terms of Industry.
And then the next one was just acceptable again. It said businesses that are acceptable. I'm like, what does acceptable mean?
Because we have, I mean, don't we have now when we had light industry or there was like
That
all this stuff?
TMU area.
Yes, you need to know what is
Self-
light industry, and that was all a big discussion, so, yeah.
You know, and as long as you're talking about acceptable, I don't see any discussion here about this, and maybe this is the appropriate place, but I think there are some businesses that some of us very much think are a detriment to the community, and others are celebrating, like the increase in these CBD marijuana type dispensaries. What are the thoughts on how to address something like that?
Well, since the town did not opt out when the state law came in. We missed the opportunity to say we can't have them here. So the state law actually includes a caveat in it that says if the town or the municipality did not opt out at in that window they had, then as long as the business meets the business definition and that sort of stuff and the setbacks and that, the town has no way to block it.
Or perhaps it's an economic opportunity.
Yeah,
Again, it's like, so what's acceptable to you might not be acceptable to me, and
Yeah.
you know, that might be an.
because we
An
recently
opportunity.
added one next to Mama Say.
Right, yeah, that's what Karen
Yeah.
was referencing. She was just.
we have to,
I mean, and it has, and that type of business though
Yeah,
has
the
an
town
impact
board
on
has
air
the rules.
quality and. You know, you can regulate things like, are you allowed to smoke on the public streets or not?
You're not allowed to smoke on any public street.
But people do, and it's not
I know,
enforced.
it's not, well, that's not our problem, that's the police.
Well,
And the state law is you're not allowed to smoke in public. That's the state law.
that's great, but it's not enforced anywhere around here, I don't think.
So this is, we're still on economic, we're still on economic.
well, I mean, there's just
Not
kind
about
of
it.
some,
I think so, so the point that you would like to bring to the table is what exactly?
That. There are types of businesses, I think Kim raised some, I just gave an example that can. Have an effect on other businesses because it makes. It more or less desirable to certain. Demographics of people perhaps.
I think Mo and Carl are right that we don't have anything to say about state law. Right?
Yeah.
So they're fitting in with the, you know, the laws and the rules. I don't know how that fits into, how does that fit into this, like
Well,
our,
well, I think we
Just
just need
language
to
that-
talk about,
About good businesses. or
right, and I think we
encouraging-
need to get rid of that
Right.
and talk.
I don't
and-
like that.
yeah.
Right, so
Yeah.
this, what is good for one person, and the same thing like about all of this, what one person thinks should be protective, another person thinks
Right.
ag land is protected, but ag land also is open fields to some people and shouldn't be worked. So I think there's a lot of different perspectives and interpretations of how this could go. I think we just need to try to, again, keep focused on what the survey data came back with and try to see if hone in on the survey data, because that again is what the people said.
But I think also like to have like a useful comp plan, like if we are doing hyperlinks, if we can to like both their points, like what is an acceptable, like if we're gonna, like, we're not gonna use the language acceptable. They can click on whatever the town
What the
board, the
is.
zoning to say this is what type of building, that is the height or whatever, like they could click on exactly.
So
that.
just to like bulk regulations and like, do you have like a schedule of uses of like what's allowed in
No.
our district?
It's all parsed out, different zones.
However,
Our
green
zoning
of
code
those.
needs to get updated.
Yeah.
I mean,
However
that's
green
usually
of
my
those
recommendation, if you do like a schedule of uses table of just each district, what's permitted, what's a special
Yeah.
use, what's not permitted.
That'll be in the update.
But then if you update this, I'm just a little worried about that, having those links in here and then they get changed.
No, I
there.
was gonna
And
say,
this is
I
the
hope
10
it's
to
green.
20-year comp plan.
Yeah,
I feel like that's gonna take a lot of management. People are gonna have to make
Right.
really sure.
right.
If
You'd
we're
have
gonna go
to-
that route, that it's kept up and
Yeah,
dealt with.
or just
well.
add some naming conventions or searching conventions in case the link doesn't work.
One last
Yeah.
thing, and I'll let this die for now, but one of the things that concerns me is that 500 people responded to this out of how many people? And these people are looking at it and they're thinking about hot topics right now, which is our outdoor rec park. They're thinking about, well, I want a cute cafe, I want a cute whatever. They're not thinking about the other businesses that serve this community to keep it going in economic development. So it's not included in there. So we are charged with listening to the public, but the public doesn't know what they don't know. And did anybody specifically say, hey, don't forget to talk about the gas station, which gives you gas, McGuire Ford, which gives you service to your cars, things like that. You don't think about that. P&S, right? To drop off your compost. We're not thinking about that, but they all serve an important purpose. And I think that if we don't somehow as a committee include that, then this comp plan is going to be skewed for the next 20 years. And people that have businesses that have a trade that or service that is valuable to the economic development and to the community and or the tourism piece. I think that we have to help facilitate that voice somehow. Or if we're going to only go with what people said in that survey, well then,
No, I'm not saying we only go, because we're still having open meetings. and a
Yeah.
lot of
no,
things
that wasn't
came-
directed either.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
just
no,
saying
I
that-
know, I'm just saying, I completely agree. I think we need to keep the public coming.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris, for coming. But we need others to come and we need input.
Yep.
And we're gonna need that throughout the rest of the process of this to make sure that it is inclusive as many opinions and different perspectives and different backgrounds and different diverse situations as possible.
I
to make
agree,
sure we're
and I
addressing.
think that's what I was sort of saying from the beginning when I was just lurking here is that, I mean, it's sad to me that out of this many people, how many people actually responded to this, right? So we've got an incredibly small sampling of opinions. And we're probably gonna find the people that responded are also certain.
Gotta be the ones that come.
Yeah. I felt that way too, and then what was your, Neil told me what percent you normally expect and how far above we are of that, and I was like, what?
Cup half full, how great are we?
How great are we?
So for planning, it's actually really good, yeah.
Awesome.
I mean,
Like you
I know- I
expect
know you- I
1%
know you
and
want
we got
5,000, but
3.
Yeah, I want people to voice
I do
their
too.
opinion, right?
I do too.
Because
I think that's also like a piece that like, it's concerning that we're like worried about like link break, like. The public should be able to access the information really easily.
Yeah.
If they're not getting information, they can't be informed to like have anything, so.
Right.
I think it's, yeah.
I'm
That's
not
what I was-
saying that we shouldn't put stuff out. I'm saying.
No, I'm
bad
not saying
links
it.
in here that.
No, I agree with that.
It really
Agreeing
has
with the
to be
link
maintained
is-
well, or else
right.
people get really
Yes.
annoyed because the stuff isn't there
Yes.
anymore and it's all broken because you've changed the zoning
Yeah,
twice since then.
Right.
Or
No,
if
that-
the government takes.
No,
it
I'm
back
just
and
saying it's on you, I'm saying it's
Right,
on
yeah.
government.
I mean, when
and
people
us
talk about like
not
making
being
laws,
able
when
to-
municipalities talk about making laws, they make them. They
yeah,
don't put exact detail of a thing that's linked there, because then you have to change a law, so this isn't a law, but I'm just saying it's a similar.
no, I
problem.
agree, and there could be guidance on proper search,
Oh,
you know, convention for whatever. sorts
Or
of
does there
things.
need to be an appendix, like
Just where to look, you know.
You know,
like
where
Tony was
any
saying.
document that's linked, and I know some links are easier to copy into a PDF type form than others, but you could have an appendix at the end that has all of the content to the extent that it can be captured.
Yeah, I think that was our goal, is to have like the resources in the back too, and have it as, you know, a title of what it is. Some with the link, some of the studies, I think it goes directly to the PDF, so it's not necessarily the site that it'll go to, so sometimes it's easier in that sense that, you know, it's just there and you just hope it stays there, but. Yeah, I think that might be helpful to just have it. All in one spot. Do we wanna move on to environment and natural resources?
Ew.
Okay. I know some folks were able to go in and make some comments. I know one thing that I kind of just wanted to know from you all, this is definitely a chapter that I know there's a lot of groups out there working on different initiatives, or there's, you know, newer maps that are coming out and things like that. So just, you know, obviously we want to make sure we capture all of that, but just to hear from you all, you know, content wise, you know, are there additional things that you wanted us to talk about that maybe you don't necessarily see right now? Or, you know, maybe you want us to dive a little bit deeper on a particular topic? I know streams is one of them. I know, thank you, Carl. He sent me all of the info about, the firm panels that are going to pertain to the town of Ulysses, so. That we can definitely talk about. I know we talked about wetland maps as well, and our GIS team, you know, working on those types of maps for us. I know there's a suggestion. Maybe it was Caitlin, or was the guest user, so I don't know, you were anonymous, but, they brought up. Talking about droughts more, so we certainly
Oh,
can
that
talk
was
about that more. Was that you?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was in climate change.
Talk about what? Drops.
Drought?
Drought.
Drought.
We talk about flooding as a result of climate change, but there's also the opposite side. There's the droughts, which also can affect a lot of different resources here. So I thought we should also be.
Yeah, I think that specific comment was by somebody else, but I was thinking the same thing, but use the terminology, we're not talking about risk of fire, we talk about risk of flood. But particularly when you look at what happened on East Shore Drive last year, and actually all of this excess rain right now, we're creating all these weeds. If we have a period of dryness, we're gonna be at high fire risk, so.
They're not exempt from fire.
Right.
Sure.
So I felt it was a little lacking in that concern, and I've
sure.
mentioned this before in other settings, but. The current zoning, I think over encourages. Protection of. Trees and dense forest, even says they recommend you leave dead trees for the habitat of animals, but that is creating a tinderbox, and. I think that at least needs to be acknowledged that there are trade-offs, and if we want to reduce fire risk, we actually should look at some weed reduction, dying plant reduction, etc.
That's not this chapter though, right?
That, I think both of those.
They
are in
overlap.
environment, but-
I was gonna say, they're definitely in
Yeah,
some
right, so
overlap.
where we are in the,
Which,
I
yeah,
know. I
yeah.
think we're in environment and natural resources.
Yeah, so I was on, page 12 is where I was.
you're on page 12 of environment and natural resources.
I was in the wrong one, I apologize.
Okay.
No, I'm just trying to find where we are.
I know.
Thanks.
And, oh, did I think I did.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's where I
challenges
said
of
they
the
get.
Yeah, okay, challenges. I
Yeah.
also think that it will come up in the other one.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
Cause like I said, there's definitely some overlap there.
But
Yeah.
going back up to curious if others think that the town is relatively flat. I thought that and
I
I
thought that was
didn't
odd
agree
too. I think the village maybe is
But
relatively
even
flat, but
that,
not the
like,
town.
when you run, when you bike,
Yeah.
like it's very
Yeah.
rolling.
Where are you at? Was
Page 11.
11, okay.
There's a sentence that just says most of the town is relatively flat. They're talking about steep slopes down to the lakes
Right.
and stuff.
Yeah. Well,
But I
there's
think
like,
we can come up with some better
No, some better.
descriptions.
kind of a plateau
Yeah.
almost with rolling hills
There's a
and
lot.
then we have some steep slopes where we
Right.
have the.
So
environmental-
I'd say
it's a
exactly
new
that.
thing.
We have a plateau, we have
With
some rolling
rolling
hills, and we have.
hills.
We have a variety of
steep-
topography
Yeah.
there.
No, for sure, I can tell.
Yeah.
Do we want, I know kind of with, I know we've kind of gone back and forth. For, I know I included like, a snapshot here of like. The new DEC wetland maps, do you think it would be helpful, like if I had like a topography like snapshot? Or do you wanna just keep all of the maps like in the back as a resource?
I mean, for topography, I think most people kind of feel that when they're driving around, walking around, biking, whatever they're doing.
Sure.
The wetlands map, I think. Is a little bit more sensitive right now because of the changes, so I could kind of see more justification for including the wetlands over like a topo map.
Okay.
But if you also had like just a general topo map. Like a quad map
Yeah.
of this town,
Mhm.
you could just defer to
I
that.
have it in the.
Yeah.
So I think we have a topo map that we prepared too, so.
One recommendation, I would have it, to have a topo map, maybe in the data section that sounds like we're gonna be incorporating into an introductory chapter, is have a breakdown. Of, slopes 0 to 10, so on and so forth. I think having a topo map of whatever we might define as steep slope. And that can change on soil type, but if it's like 12% greater for certain soils, that would be really great to have, because. One of my
Development.
concerns about our current zoning code is we don't really have protection for steep slopes. We don't have buffers from steep slopes, it's really just germane to wetlands and streams for the most part.
There is a map, I could send you it and you could look at it, or everybody that is in the still coming along draft of the drinking water source protection plan that does that, and it has the topography, it has the slopes. And we played actually around with how it looked, shading wise and what those increments were. So you can look at that and see if, I think it would be good for us to use the same thing in our
send it.
in our plans, and so if there's a better one, we should change that one, that's happening at the same time, so. I can send that one to you if you want, you guys can look at it and see what you think.
I was also gonna say that, I think that should be listed at the top of this chapter as a reference, right?
Yeah,
The water source.
so as a bullet, not the summary.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it should be done before this is done.
And then what's the official title? of it?
Hello.
Drinking
Water source protection plan. Ulysses, Town of Ulysses, drinking water source. I was actually just still on that, concerned about, because they had some things in there for a while about, land use type, and they had those maps, and I was arguing that we should take them out of the drinking water source protection plan because they would potentially be in comp plan. I could maybe talk to you about this, Niels, and see, because I was just concerned that we have the same things in both of them, so.
Mhm.
I'm kind of the one that's causing trouble on that committee with that, but I think it's important.
I should know, but I don't. Do we usually, or do comp plans tackle for an endangered species at all?
I think we talked about that. I saw your comment and I did include a snapshot map from the DC era mapper that just
Yep.
kind of showed what those buffer areas were.
Yep.
So we can add additional language, like I can pull a report that I think I might have already pulled it, that kind of gives an overview of,
Do we,
here's
I
the
mean,
very
we
endangered
got
species.
peregrine falcons, but there's gotta be other
Sturgeon.
bald eagle, sturgeons in the lake. There's got. I don't know if we have any frogs. Salamanders.
We can include that.
A lot.
Protect.
Keeping their habitats in consideration.
Yeah,
making
yeah.
sure they're protected.
Right.
Yeah,
And just, mindful development, somebody, is gonna have a post development and they go do, an IPAC consultation of, making sure they have an official species list. They do any recommended determination keys to make sure that they're not gonna impact whatever
Yeah.
endangered species.
cause I'm also
Right.
thinking like the FEAF that we're gonna have, the town board's gonna have to complete. We'll go through all those questions, so if it's not in here, we might not be able to answer the question effectively. That was also why I suggested having the CEA.
Yeah, and I know with like in the EAF mapper itself, like when you're going to do seeker, like you
Yeah.
can't really delineate a whole town and be like,
Yeah.
it's too big. Pick a small.
Yeah, we haven't figured that one
Pick a
out
parcel
yet.
or something, so.
Unless Neil's you that.
So
But then invasive species, I think Karen, you had mentioned it in climate change, but I thought that was a good one too,
Right,
because
for
it
sure.
is, especially down at the lake and then. Well,
So we can
elsewhere and
validate it
everywhere.
for looking at.
And actually, one other comment, I think that goes along with that. I was weed whacking today and it struck me. Every season, I feel like I have to put up signage and be alert to when the road crew's coming through with their chemicals and mowing. To make sure they don't spray right into the creeks that go right into the lake. You know, they come up, I'm particularly aware on 89, they'll come up and they'll spray weed killer, which I assume is a Roundup or similar. And nobody seems to be concerned about, they're spraying right over the bridges and culverts that is basically dumping right into the lake, which is our water supply. And I mean, I know it's New York State
I was gonna say, that's a state road.
DOT, but they're negatively impacting our environment and safety, so seems like it's relevant. I don't know.
Yeah.
It looks like there's something to maybe add.
No, I agree, and one of the things that got me is I was driving somewhere near Buffalo, and there's a community that they chose to use less salt on the roads, and there's signage up there that's, you know, sensible salting means sensible driving or something like that, and
That's too.
that's something that I think we should also, or I would hope the town addresses is, you know, the
Love that.
balancing of salt. as
Same
well.
idea, yes.
My car would love it too.
I think
Yeah.
Scott is thinking about that.
He's looking
pretty
at
well.
mixtures
Yeah,
for-
so he'd probably be glad to have that and have a sign recognizing it if he does it.
And even though it's a state road, I think it's like, you kind of to your point of just, you know, advocating as a community that, you know,
Yeah.
please don't do that.
And
Right.
it's actually.
Be a little bit
interesting-
more considerate.
In our
of-
recommendations that we care
Exactly.
about these things and
Yeah.
we can advocate even if we can't.
Exactly,
control.
you can't, yeah.
And they do seem to be responsive, because what I've discovered, if you as a homeowner personally keep the areas mowed, and when I know they're coming through, I usually put up a sign that says, please do not spray. And this has been successful for probably the last 3 years. And I notice everything's overgrown, so we're probably due for them to come through and do that. So one thing we could do, you know, encourage homeowners to do their own weeding so that the road crew doesn't have to come through and spray the chemical. So that's what I'm personally trying to do, is just keep the weeds continually outside the zone where they would spray, so that when they go by, hopefully they don't think there's anything they have to spray.
That doesn't work for snow plowing.
Exactly.
I tried to get them to not fill in my driveway once.
Oh.
There's a similar one, it's the elephant in the room of ag practices. That always run off into ditches that then get to our lakes. So. Finding the needle and the thread for that one.
Yeah.
As far as how can the town advocate and or promote BMPs for existing and future ag. And
Fabulous suggestions.
You know, let me just ask, for the roads that are town roads, is there any current policy regarding the use of weed killers, or in the winter salt?
In the winter. They use salt
Right.
to keep the roads safe for travel.
And I know that's a trade-off.
I don't know about.
herbicides.
Herbicides or pesticides, but I
I've
can,
never seen them.
I've never seen, they usually
They
just
cut.
mow.
They just cut the.
Yeah, I've only seen mechanical
Yeah.
treatments, I haven't seen any.
And I think the salt is geographic anyway, right? Like in other, you can go down toward the city, they use salt, or I just said salt sand, right? So, but we have an abundant supply of salt here, so I think that.
Yeah,
Maybe
we
not
did,
more,
yeah, we did until last year.
All right, so how are we doing on chapter 6?
I think we're doing good. Did anybody else have like any major comments they wanted to share. So
Read it,
otherwise,
so I'm
we'll
sure
let
I
you
will
have
once I
time.
have
I
time
was say, I'm
to-
sure you will once you have time, so.
Yeah, that's a good
hope-
starting point.
I was just gonna share that last night at the
Yes.
planning board, we got our first one of these wetlands determination things. There was a couple copies, just pass them around to look at it. This property owner has a piece of property runs from 89 down to the lake. And the state DEC came back and said, there's some version of a wetland on here. Good part is it only took them 35 days to respond. They're allowed 90 days, so that was pretty responsive. But the next step for the property owner now is to go to the regional DEC and work out with them the actual dimensions of where the wetland limit is, and then you add the extra 100-foot setback from that.
So they're looking to build what?
Put a house on there, a garage on there, and that sort of stuff. It's a good sized lake lot, but depending on where this state determines this to actually be, it could seriously impact their ability to actually build on that lot.
I think that
And
the,
anywhere in the town, you know, if you're looking at trying to do something in the next year or two, you probably want to be going to the DEC ahead of time and getting their initial, do you have a wetland or do you not have a wetland to deal with? And then, you know, if you get lucky and it comes back negative, you're good to go.
Something you wanna know in advance, right?
Right.
Is that, I know that tool to like actually go in and kind of do
Right.
like the
Fill out the
questionnaire,
form.
is that something that we want
I
to
know,
hear is like
yeah.
a resource?
Or
Or do we not wanna talk about
I
it,
think
or-
it's more the planning department and that needs the link in that. I just bring it up
Sure.
for general info for the board and that here is an
Yeah.
idea that this is new coming in, but the state makes the initial cut on it and then the regional works out the fine details.
You
Right.
can skip that
and
process.
usually.
You can just go straight and get a delineation done too, by a
Very
professional scientist.
I think on that property.
But it's pretty
that-
expensive.
That's the bank.
No,
No,
small property wouldn't be that.
Depends on the street.
Yeah.
That's how, right?
side.
Alright, sorry, where are we? Are we in?
So we're gonna do the
Oh, okay.
chapter 7.
Okay, so we're going to chapter 7, which is climate change and resiliency element.
What?
And we'll spend maybe 20 minutes on this, and then we're gonna get to our open house, like leave a little time before 7. to
Yeah,
talk about open house.
That sounds great.
Now we've been claiming.
Yep. They mow and trim. They do not use chemicals.
Oh, good.
Just that way.
Something I did wanna include in this one, on page 10, I know there's a couple worked on this, but I thought it was helpful just to have a list of different organizations at various levels that are, you know, involved in climate change work and, hazard mitigation, so I have a list here. If you think there's additional groups that maybe we missed or we should be including in here, that's something I would bring to your attention that, you know, if there's someone that needs to be represented, we can add them on here.
On the question that you had above Roxanne, we're still bronze certified, right?
No,
No, we lost it.
yeah, we have to finish, we have everything done, we just need to process it, but I definitely wanted to talk to some more about that. So I will talk to you.
So we can probably get that updated.
Yeah.
As our certification.
Okay,
It might have to sit in kind of limbo during the draft. but
Right.
Hopefully
Sure.
by the time we finish this, we'll
Like, or we
Certified.
can.
say we're working on,
We're working on recertification.
Right.
We were certified. We are a clean energy community. We've got
I was
a lot
gonna
of
say,
them.
yeah, so as we're
Yeah.
like identifying organizations, you mean organizations that are focusing
Yeah.
specifically on climate change, not incorporating those practices into their work, like an organization like INHS,
Or
the housing
reuse.
organization that, yeah, or reuse, that is a different kind of a company, but kind of
we could
incorporates
include
all of
that,
that.
is that, so.
I don't know if that
Okay.
fits here or not. I mean, I'm just, that was a question, like, if these are meant to be organizations that are.
I mean, originally I was kind of just like looking at it of like, who like through studies I've seen or through like, initiatives that have been done, what organizations have been involved, but if you think it needs to be broadened to include additional organizations, like, I'm not opposed to that.
I think in this section. For like the state organizations, the local organizations, I think where you have listed and we can go through and just see if there's any others that we can think of. Would be good, but maybe on other resources. What's this?
Online resources?
Online resources. Maybe there's still like an other resources where it's for just points of what others are doing or something like that.
That,
I mean, INHS is, well, now they're in town.
Yeah.
Through the village. Reuse is
So
technically
you
down.
could,
in-
or I could
at
tag
the
them in,
front.
but you could add the Cuba
Solar.
Lake Watershed
We have the solar
Intermunicipal
power thing.
Organization.
Yeah.
We are a member of that.
I don't know if that's solar fit here.
It's a municipal one,
Yeah, Renovus moved, they're not in the town.
watershed, intermunicipal
Jackson.
organization.
Did they move out of the town? I thought they moved to like the old,
IO.
Are they still?
And also
So-
Clean Energy Communities Program, that's under
Genex?
NYSERDA, but
Okay.
cooperative
Is
extension
that still the
locally.
town?
It's so it'd probably be under regional
Is
and
that?
state. I don't
yeah,
know
I
what-
did have one for now.
Right, cooperative extension
Okay.
does the clean,
So
but
we're
we are a
saying
clean
that.
energy community, so I don't know if you wanna
So
put that
okay.
wherever you wanna. put it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
It's kind of an initiative, but it's one that we are doing.
Yeah,
And then Tompkins County Soil and Water is definitely one
Yeah.
that deals with flooding and stuff like that.
and then, in addition to just, the existing conditions, I did think it was an opportunity just to share, obviously since the last comp plan, there's a lot more data out there, there's a lot more tools, so I kind of wanted to highlight on, what are some of the tools that, people can access for free online, just to help them, with their planning, especially with agriculture, just, additional tools that they can look at, so I included that in there, I thought that was helpful.
What page is that?
So that's on the next page, page 11.
11, right? Okay.
Yeah. So I just gave a brief overview of, what their tools are about, how they can use them, how they could be useful as far as farming practices, hazard mitigation, things of that nature.
Oh, another organization is the Cuba Lake Watershed Network.
What about EMS, what's,
Oh, the
Their
Tompkins County Environmental Management,
is that on there, EMC?
ENC.
I can add them.
Yep. That would be county one, just the county. Cuba Lake Watershed, I guess would be regional, but outside of mine.
So Karen, is this the chapter where you felt like there was a lack of conversation about fire risk?
Yes, and the invasive species. And then I guess that kind of brings in what I was previously mentioning about concern about overuse of chemicals, but then we've got, as I just noted in my comment, we do have giant hogwort that's been identified, and that's, potentially life-changing. It can blind you, it can cause third-degree burns. So that is something where, yeah, you probably do have to use chemicals or something, but I think the indiscriminate use of just like going up the road and spraying everything is not necessary. But if you identify we've got a species that's not just bothersome, it's actually potentially harmful to humans, then there's probably different gradations of invasive species.
Yeah.
Species,
But I think it's important because it's one, it's people's health.
right,
It could overtake fields that were previously used for different crops. It could take over ecosystems and change ecosystems. So I definitely think invasive species is something we can
I
talk
think
about,
so too, yeah.
especially as development or
and I think
happens.
if you do everything on your own property to try to control them, but your neighbors do
Right.
nothing. It's really hard because I've had patches where I thought, I dug up as much as possible. And then you see the seeds floating in the air, from my own properties, but also from neighbors, because you can't control what they do on their.
Right,
What happens when your vegetative buffer is an invasive species?
I know, like the honeysuckle.
No, ours is what, bamboo or something like
Ours is
that?
different.
There's some sort of it's,
Yeah.
bamboo's not the right name, it's,
Japanese, not,
thank you,
Yes.
thank you, yes.
Have you, sorry, maybe I haven't looked this up yet. Do you guys have hydrilla in Cave
In the
Lake?
lake, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so we can, in that kind of inventory and analysis part, we can include more about, invasive species. Maybe we can talk about some of the ones that we just mentioned here tonight. Just some awareness about
Or
it.
just, like Cooperative Extension has a lot of information on those, as does the Watershed Network, and others for the hydro. So,
It's all mapped on DEC too.
yeah,
The maps.
so I don't think we have to have.
Yeah,
huge
I was
discussion
gonna say,
about
it's
it.
pretty readily
Mention,
available.
yeah, just mention that they are here and they're.
And then this is like an overview of like the goals that have been suggested. A lot of it is honing in on awareness of climate change, adaptation, mitigation, and preparedness efforts. Looking at water quality, reducing impacts of flooding, you can obviously look at other impacts that have been brought up as well. Reducing adverse impacts of natural resources and ecosystem caused by climate change. Looking at vulnerabilities and impacts due to climate change and extreme weather. And on the last page, I've listed some resources, so I would imagine when we have kind of that resource page. Towards the end of the document, it'll be a fashion sort of like this that has everything listed and it can have an embedded link.
Do we? Cause so this chapter is climate and resiliency.
Mhm.
Did we cover like renewable energy enough?
There's this, sort of
We can talk
here
about
and
it
there.
I just looked for solar and solar
Yeah.
comes up once. And I'm not saying that that works for everybody. And. A lot of changes going on,
Right.
but,
So more of a conversation of like renewable
what
resources
potential,
and energy
yeah,
efficiency.
and it's not just solar, but that's a resiliency that we can take as a community that goes not only towards our smart communities and
Right.
our climate change, but,
And just energy
can
consumption.
help
Sure.
with
Well,
Maybe
there's
our
also like community source
bills.
aggregation type programs for energy that
Right.
sort of come and go. They go up and down in interest and stuff, but
There's heat
they can be
pumps,
mentioned,
there's
that
solar, there's wind.
that's a way to move towards
Yeah.
more renewable energy, at a community scale without putting in infrastructure. But putting in solar is an issue.
Yeah, and I don't think we
Regardless
should
of
talk about,
farmland and all.
yeah, I don't think we should be talking about, policies right now, because again, this is gonna be something that's 10-20 years out.
It guides the
So
policies,
whatever's in the place right now could be very different from 5 years, could be
Right.
very different from a year.
Were heat pumps here 20 years ago, for example,
But,
right?
right, yeah, but I think it'd be something that we can incorporate into the comp plan at some encourage.
But energy savings and energy efficiency.
Yeah.
Is heat pump, would be a thing that heat pumps would be, if you have things like that that are more broad in there, then as those things come along.
You could just say maybe innovation, keep up with as innovations change, things like that, because we don't know what's
Right.
what's coming.
The next.
Right.
Nuclear's coming down.
Right.
Yes.
Right, I mean, we really don't know, so we just kind of have to.
Oh, I'm serious.
No, I am too, like, I hear you, that's what I'm saying, we really don't know,
Yeah.
like, where
We don't.
we're gonna be in 5 years, let alone 10
Exactly.
or 20.
Yeah.
Do you do work in nuclear energy?
No, just energy.
Oh, okay.
My clients are all energy clients, I should say.
Yeah, so we can have more of a discussion then on, renewable resources, energy efficiency, just different.
Clean energy.
Clean energy, just more of a conversation.
Yeah, resiliency
And the benefits. of
with
it.
climate change and weather changing. More storms means more power outages, and how do folks be able to adapt to those power outages for sure.
Oh, that's a good, point. Right, generators, how are your generators
Right,
running and
but-
all of that.
Better storage.
I haven't
Sorry for
read it
opening
yet.
it up.
No, no, I'm glad. I haven't had a chance to go through it. Now I'm getting excited. I'm like, oh no.
I mean, overall, I think they're coming together well. Appreciate the efforts your team's putting in.
What's that?
I said, overall, I think these are coming together well, and I appreciate the efforts
Oh,
that your
of
team.
course, yeah, thank you so much. I
I second
appreciate your
that.
feedback from you all.
It's nice to see it come out. Like,
Start to come together.
yeah, start to come together, yeah.
Yeah.
So in like it says projected climate change and resiliency needs, that's not the same as like a goal or an objective or something, that's something. More, it's on page 13, that's more current that town should be working on, or?
I think it's
I'm
just
trying to
kind of
tell what
looking at
that
like, what do you
category-
need to do like in the future of like, what are some big
Oh.
overarching.
Wouldn't that be goals and policies? And I'm just trying to see what's different, what that is relative to goals, objectives and.
I think it was
policies.
meant to just be like a short list of like, these are the overarching things we should be thinking about, but then. The goals get like a little bit more specific. Or if we think it's redundant and we don't need it, like we can take it
Well,
out.
I think we need those, but I'm just wondering if they need to be sort of stated as, so that like if the town is reading through and making work plans or whatever. They see that, yeah, we should develop a climate action plan and maybe that's a high priority item, like sometimes these items get prioritized when you do it.
Sure,
And so, like, if you just say it's projected as a need, it's not necessarily as strong as saying, it's like a goal or to complete or to achieve.
yeah, basically there's a policy that follows, but I do understand what you're saying of
Yeah.
like the prioritization.
Or maybe we could put those in or make sure that they're prioritized in the policies. Yeah,
Like their culvert replacement plan that they're working their way.
right,
through,
yeah,
Deal with the big ones.
Mhm.
a flood mitigation.
Yeah, do they
plan.
start at the top of the document? Or do
Right, exactly,
they-
but
How far do they get?
just to be clear, like if it's a document that's used for, moving policies and actions forward by the town government, then it should be clear how they could be seen and prioritized.
Mhm.
Short and long term maybe or something like that. Cause those are kind of short termish things for them that we should do.
Right, what else in this? Chapter are we? Do you have more to discuss in this chapter, more for our overview, or are we in a good
I
place?
think we're in a good place. I know some folks have gone in and made comments so far, so thank you to those who have, and I know we've had, some dialogue here, so if people just wanna expand on those. When you have time to do a deeper review and add in your comments, I think we'll do great and we can address them.
By the 18th.
But
By the
All right, do we have anything else on the review, or do we get into the open house conversation?
Talk open house.
All right. So, I don't know who is Neil's assistant. Do you have something to say about the open house or?
Do we need to pick a date or is that already been like?
Well-
identified?
Well, for,
Where-
it can be,
Yeah,
of,
where are we at? with
A
it?
venue.
We were talking about venue and do we have any updates on that?
So-
Go ahead. Sorry, I was gonna say, I put in the, our shared folder, I did put a Word document that if people wanna brainstorm any ideas. pertaining to the open house, they could, I don't know if any comments have been made.
Yeah.
No, okay.
Well, I don't know that, but that was a question I was gonna say, is like,
Oh, okay.
last month we discussed having that put on there, so. Please use that form.
Is the
Right,
open
yes.
house the same as
There it is,
public
empty, but
Yeah.
forum too?
Yeah,
Okay.
open house two, public forum two. I did reach out again to record, because I think that's the consensus that we're getting as record
Uh-huh.
sometime in September. I left another voicemail today.
Let me, talk to me after the meeting, I have a connection.
Okay.
Did you say Radford?
Radnor.
And are you thinking,
Wilkins Road.
yeah, I was just wondering, somebody's out here, right? What month are you guys thinking? 'Cause I'm worried about like summer vacation.
September, October.
Perfect, so people are back, that's what I thought you said, but I just wanted to make sure it's.
Yep.
Perfect.
And part of this obviously is timing of when the committee is ready to be done with all the chapters, right?
yeah, better be on it, and then
Probably should look at the end.
Probably look later.
early September,
Well, yeah.
January.
No,
2026.
no, we're getting this done.
Isn't there a holiday too?
I was gonna say, there's lots of holidays in September and October, so. We probably should just make sure,
No overlap.
yeah, and then take a look at school open houses, cause we can't conflict with those. If we want folks there.
Is
So
the
then
nature
if
center still a
there's-
viable option?
Hmm?
Is the nature center still a viable option?
I don't know, I don't know.
Yeah, is it closed out?
I don't know, I just saw somebody
Right.
typed it in here.
That was me.
Oh, look at you, you're so fast. I wasn't sure.
Well, I think we talked about Hugo Nature Center, but then we weren't sure if that was an option.
Yeah, I'm not,
Sure, there's space right now.
Opposite ends.
Good chat.
Just-
probably, is it gonna be the similar like setup where? It's like from a 3 to 7. I forget how we did it,
Yeah, I think, what did we do, 4 to 7?
4 to 7.
I think that was a pretty good time frame. We had a lot of people come during that time frame, so I think we could do that again. As far as like how it's set up, I think we can have like the draft chapters like on hand if people want to review them. I was also thinking something I've done like in the past, like when we have like this open house stage, is basically we'll have big boards that have basically all of the policies and goals from each chapter, and they're on boards, and people can kind of react and write comments about them. You know, if they're in agreement, if they think it needs to be tweaked, or, you know, if they have, you know, additional ideas that they want to convey. So I don't know if like, you know, you want that type of feedback as far as, you know, the recommendations that are being presented, or if you had something like totally different in mind as far as the outcome you wanted, you know, to get to
Just
public
do that.
feedback.
It did,
It's not-
I'll tell you in a second. Sorry, we're fighting on the places online,
Oh,
like
We're
adding
overtyping
places
each
and
other.
overtyping.
We were-
Cedarwood is,
oh.
Cedarwood is now becoming a beauty spot.
Oh, I did not know
Last
that,
time it
thank
was trying to
you.
delete that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I did not know
Bella
that.
is moving to Cedarwood. Cedarwood bought,
Bruise and bronze or whatever it was.
yep, they bought, my gosh.
New Park.
Nope, no,
No.
they own that too.
Oh,
It's over on Seneca Lake. The
Oh,
beautiful one that's up over Hector Fairgrounds that looks down over the lake.
Oh, yeah.
All Diamond Road.
Yeah, off of that.
it's not Bruce Darren, right? 'Cause that
No.
would be
Red
sad.
Newt?
No, I'm drawing a blank, but so
Anyway,
that's
Thank
gonna be
Cedarwood is
Bella.
no longer.
I think she's changing the name of it.
Yeah,
but I think that, see, we were trying to do something on the other end of
right,
town.
right, that's why, yeah, that's why
Not
Racker.
Right up here near the. village.
Exactly, that's why
Yeah.
we were looking at Rackers.
That was my
Adapted.
suggestion out there, as they were trying to correct me. I was trying to be an overachiever and fill in some of the blanks.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying that was from an earlier,
Yeah.
we were trying to,
Sorry, I wasn't trying to be rude.
trying
I
to
was gonna
cover
explain it.
another end of town.
But yeah, I think 4 to 7, I don't wanna get into, there'll be some people who wanna sit down at the open house and like go word for word through the chapters. And I think we wanna try to focus maybe on like the goals or objectives. Still have the chapters available, and some of us can sit and talk to the folks
for sure.
through the existing conditions and the references or whatever. But I don't know if anybody has any other thoughts about how to kind of present this, and obviously this is just the first brainstorm. But
So
Well, we need to
you
do better with our
put the
outreach.
chapters on the town website, let people read them beforehand, and then
Yeah.
they can ask questions.
Yeah, I think it would be great to have a much more concise outreach plan than we had last time and get, like, let's get the date picked as soon as possible and whatever the digital outreach we have and the flyers so that we can really push it out, because we had like a last minute scramble to throw it out into the world, because we had, you know, we didn't get enough outreach really, so it'd be good to have. I think it'd be nice to have a plan for like 2 weeks ahead of time, or a month, you know what I mean? What comes out a month ahead of time, what comes out at 2 weeks, what comes out a week, you know what I mean? Just have that like,
We can develop like a open house kind of launch plan, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. So we can work on that and maybe we can discuss it. Well, I know we have a lot going on next week, but we can at least, you know, I can at least like put it in the shared folder and then we have time. When we
Yeah.
have time, we can kind of discuss it, or people can, you know, add thoughts.
it might not be a bad idea to get that out on the community website too, ahead of the open house, so that others have a sense, cause I know at least one person came to the open meeting, the open hearing. Sorry, open house that we had last one and was expecting to be reviewing chapters.
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
we have something that's like a cheat sheet or like an expectations of kind of,
Yeah, an
When they
explanation
should
of like,
be
what can you expect?
going
in this event,
out,
essentially.
yeah.
Yeah.
then we can make sure that that gets out.
The problem is telling people that it's on the website. That's
Well,
the other problem.
Yeah, I mean, we can work with Carissa to get out on the
Right.
weekly Friday emails and then the list serve and maybe ahead of that one, we do a news article to get in free press.
Or
Yes.
billboard of some sort.
Yeah.
Like at Sure Save, right on
They're
the road,
safe, yeah,
people go by. they can
Give
see
me
it.
coffee, Little Venice,
Yeah,
Crackers, Pines,
Yeah.
Mama said.
Will there also be a legal public hearing at some point?
Oh, yeah. in order
The
to
town board
finalize-
have to,
Yeah, in order to adopt
Yeah.
the plan. the town board
we'll
is,
have to
yeah.
do seeker review.
Well, you have to have the final document in order to
Yeah,
go to
okay.
a public hearing.
So I missed the first one. Apologies if asked and answered, but did we have any sort of like digital content, like a rolling slideshow with some hits? Like, so people are just standing around kind of talking, there's a visual, sometimes that just seeps into their brain.
Like, I think we have.
Sometimes it's just like, people
yeah.
are standing around, right? And they're like, oh, but
I like
it's,
that.
Mhm.
We have all the photos that people sent, we can use.
I'm just saying it'll maybe engage some people that maybe wouldn't necessarily talk or.
I'll
but
put some
might
of the
see-
charts and the graphs and you know what I mean? I think
Yeah.
that's-
Hit some of the
I
high
still think
points.
having it be kind of like how I was explaining earlier with the boards, it to be interactive, I certainly don't want to just like sit and feel like they have to read unless somebody wants to come and just sit and read. But very much, like I said, have, you know, the board set up in an exercise where people can like really engage and give their thoughts, you know. Green dots, I like this, red dots, I don't like this, there's a space for them to convey any comments they have. I feel like that would be like my main suggestion of, you know, as far as, you know, getting the goals and objectives out there for people to review and how to be able to interact with it and, you know.
Dots are
fun way.
magic. You do dots versus making people put write comments. We do that all the time for IT conferences. We're like, here's the content, put your dot where it goes. But if you ask people to write stuff, they're like,
Yeah, so I have an action, I always say like, if you wanna write a comment, you can, and some people
I think we did
kind
kind
of
of
know,
know.
so.
Did one.
Yes.
You might even be able to set up tables like the Record Center.
Yeah, it's
did, and they have these
Yeah.
like round, they used to have round tables. And so you could have each chapter and you
Exactly.
can have that summary on a board, but someone from our
Yeah,
committee sitting
yeah.
there to talk. And then people wanna talk, you can write things, they just wanna put a dot.
That's
you can write
perfect.
things.
They wanna get you a
Right.
red line markup.
Right,
Hand you
and I
out.
also wonder if you might wanna do just, you know, like 5 to 7 minutes of an intro, you know, when everyone's in there. So a
Sure.
lot of people, when they walked into the other one, were like, what? And so just like, here's where we're at, this is the state, this is what we're trying to get, you know,
Sure.
however we decide it's laid out, here's all these tables you can go around and visit. And, you know, just less than 10 minutes, but like, just so that people get oriented. before
Yeah,
they
we
go.
can do that in the beginning, and then we can still have someone that, you know, gives the spiel, cause just cause people are gonna come in like.
Oh,
through
yeah.
Various hours, so I
Yeah.
think having that in the beginning.
Right,
would
but
be
if we have it
helpful.
in the kind of beginning, get everybody oriented on.
Yeah.
So just time check, we got 1 minute.
Mhm.
7 o'clock. Thanks, Sam.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you for a minute.
So do we need to do
Oh,
any
date,
more?
we were still talking about the date,
Are we picking the date tonight?
no?
We don't have to,
Okay,
tonight.
well,
Maybe
people
you
should
decide at the next meeting.
Do we need a?
Well,
I
poll?
think by the
we need
next
to
meeting,
know
we
for
should.
sure. if We can do
Okay.
brackets first,
Yeah.
right, before we.
I was gonna say, I would figure out what venue can get.
Yeah,
If
they
we
might
have like a
dates.
general time.
All right, and that's you, Neil.
I'll work with Liz. We'll find out availability and put out maybe a poll.
Yeah,
And then
that
maybe
was
put out a poll for
yeah,
dates that would be
late
helpful.
September through October.
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay,
And just
Um,
remember in like late September to avoid Jewish holidays.
yeah. All holidays,
Yeah, lots of them.
yeah.
I
Good
think
point.
that, yeah, the early
Um,
beginning of October and the end of September. Beginning of October is busy for the town board. Because of the budget, right? So we
That's just.
probably don't wanna make
it-
too many.
Halloween.
What?
That's-
Work too, 'cause yeah, right, it is
Yeah.
budget season for all of us.
Yeah.
Next
No.
steps for July.
No, but I mean, the board has might have extra meetings and all, is all I'm saying, so they might, we want them,
They're already scheduled.
we want to make sure the board can be engaged. so.
That's open.
So July 2nd for our next meeting? Is it 5,
Does that work for folks?
Yeah,
is it 5 to 7 again, another 2 hour?
well,
Time
we're
frame.
doing 5 chapters, I think,
I know, but
so.
it's taking-
5 to midnight?
What I was, is
I
anybody,
personally
not
have no
five
life
to
in the
midnight. I
summer.
think 5 to
So
7.
I'm always here,
mine's baseball life, so.
but
I'll be.
July 2nd works for me. If we're
Okay.
just asking around the table.
Yeah,
Not saying
anybody?
it works.
July 2nd?
Yeah, right,
If works for you, would you raise your hand?
Yep.
all right, works.
Enough of this to make a form.
Niels, you okay with that?
Yeah, I didn't put, before.
there goes your vacation.
We all know that we're going to review the 3 in the next 2 weeks. We're gonna do our final review of the first 2, also by the 18th?
Yeah.
Okay, so the first 5, and then we're gonna have the next 2, which you're gonna tell us when those come out.
Right.
What's this public forum number 2 preparation and planning?
That's what we were just,
I think
Oh, that's the,
that's why I asked this open house,
Why
the
is it
same
here
thing.
twice?
it's the
Okay.
same thing, yeah.
all right, anyone have a quick member report? You have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Oh,
Wait,
Do we put up-
I think we have
Lord ones? Lord that ones.
I think.
I'm
we'll do
mixing
that
cards,
once.
yeah, one thing about the invites, Neil, so they're on, Neil's, they're on the
Yeah,
calendar, but they say, I have them, but they say 5:30, so. Like, my July 2nd one says 5:30,
Oh,
so
yeah,
if you
that
can
was the
fix them
original.
to 5, that,
Yeah.
I know, that'd be great,
Yeah,
cause
you'll
I
get-
can't change these.
You'll all get an update
Right.
probably tomorrow.
Yeah, I tried to change them and then, so,
Okay,
great, thank you.
The motion on the floor.
Bill?
I'll second it to adjourn.
All in favor?
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
I know, starting